Who said that? That's right. I'm not going to say that. But we've been talking about a sermon series, Walking with Jesus, and so I hope you've been enjoying it. But the whole purpose of this sermon series is really to look at the life of Jesus, the simplicity of who Jesus is, and to take the things that he did in the Bible and to really apply them to our life. And we have been looking at unique things that he has done that maybe would go against culture or society and have challenged us in those things. And so the first week we talked about patience and waiting and how Jesus was patient and he wasn't in a hurry to get to places and that his timing is right. And I know as young adults, we love to hear about being patient and waiting, right? You're like, no, I want everything now, all right? And then the second week, we talked about humility. We talked about humility and getting low and lowering yourself. And that's another thing in culture and society where it's pride and it's being, the top. It's about, the follower. It's about this, I need to be seen as the greatest. But Jesus, he demonstrated, no, if you want to be the greatest, you must lower yourself and you must serve. And so we talked about humility and what it's like to truly live a life being humble. And then last week, we talked about a unique thing that many, even ministries don't talk about a lot, but you can't look at the life of Jesus and expect to walk with Jesus and to be like him unless you pay attention to what he did. And he was a big part of his ministry. He healed people. And so we talked about healing and the power of healing and how we need to participate in praying for people to be healed. But tonight, what we're going to do in finishing this up is that we are going to be doing something a little different where we're going to be doing a panel tonight. And so we've asked young adults like yourself to come up and to just speak about what it means to really walk with Jesus and to have different perspectives. Because you might be like, oh yeah, Pastor Taylor, he's telling us kind of how to live. He's got it all together and, he's a pastor. And so, I got to listen to him and it's hard. I just want you to know, like, that's all lie. Okay, I don't have it all together. I'm still figuring it out. I'm just like you, okay? I'm young. And I'm holding on to that, all right? But I'm still figuring out. But what we want to do is we want to put some young adults up here that really are just walking, just like you are, trying to walk with Jesus and try to live this life out. We just want to learn from them and we want to speak life into them. And so I'd encourage you, pay attention, take notes to what they say, because the people we're having up here are going to crush it and they have so much wisdom. And so first I'm going to introduce the one that's going to be kind of mediating the thing. Is that the proper word, right? Facilitating, mediating? Mediating is like when you have an argument. Okay, sorry, wrong word. Facilitating it, all right? And so please help me welcome to the stage Meredith as she comes up, and she's going to be facilitating it. So you can... All right, and then I'm going to introduce the panel speakers that are going to be speaking. And so the first person, you guys all know this person. She was actually just right up here doing announcements. So please help me welcome to the stage Haley. Come on. The next person also I know this is like a new thing, a new toy that we just got, but people in the back, can you see me? Because I can't see you. Because this whole fog thing is just going crazy right now. All right? Can you see me? Wave. All right? If you're waving, I can't see you. Okay, there you are. Okay, there we go. Praise God. All right. But I just had to double check, okay? Because anyway. And so the second person that's going to be coming up and sharing is a person that we all love, that we all know, and she has a deep, deep heart and deep love for Jesus. I'm telling you, she has wisdom beyond her years, and she truly just wants to get the theology and the heart of who God is, and you're going to learn so much from her. So please help me welcome to stage Rachel. Come on, make some noise for Rachel. And last but not least, you guys all know this guy. He is just a pillar of this young adult ministry. He's been in it. He's been a servant in it. He's been a leader in it for so long, and I'm telling you, he has just an amazing heart for young people. And also, he might not, promote this, but he just came out with a book, so you need to go buy his book, all right? And so he can maybe talk about that, but I know he's kind of like, I don't want to promote. I was like, dude, you got to promote it, all right? So I'll do it for him. But he's an amazing heart. He's so much knowledge, has so much knowledge, and he's just going to bless you all. And so please help me welcome to stage Josh as he comes up. Come on.
All right. Woo! Woo! Come on, give it up for the panel one more time. These awesome people. Yay! Well, thank you for sitting here and diving in. We're excited to hear from you, panel members. And these are your small group leaders, so you've already gotten so much wisdom and direction from them and know them personally. So thank you, awesome people, for doing this. So we're going to dive in with just a really easy question that you can answer. And it's, why do you walk with Jesus?
That's a great question. You want me to start?
Josh.
I think for me, it's easy to say I grew up in church as like initial answer, but that's not like a lasting answer for me, at least. I think that was how I started walking with Jesus. Grew up in church, kind of that story. But for me, it's really been what I've seen God do in my life while walking with Him has just constantly kind of affirmed me to continue walking with Him. And it's not easy, but it's one of those things where you start kind of just, sometimes you weigh things out and you're like, okay, why do I walk with God? Why do I follow Jesus? And I think those are the things that can help me to continue walking with God, is when I see what He's done in my life and when I continually choose to continue walking with Him, because it's a daily choice. But I would say when I look back at just like the journey that He's brought me on, and kind of even the other options are just so, like, if you really kind of weigh them out, like, what are the other options? The world, we all know the world has really nothing to offer lasting, right? Like, I think we all, as we walk with God, we all see it on some level, but we still maybe might toe that line. And that's why I do. Yeah.
That's really good.
Hey, I have notes. I'm a notes kind of woman. I'm a notes kind of woman. So for me, I want to try to, it's so overwhelming to me because I'm like someone who wants to get everything right. Just like make sure I communicate properly. I'm pretty cerebral. So my answer is half cerebral, half experiential, right? So I follow Jesus because He's factually and historically true. The miracles that He performed are historically accurate and are proven through history, through science, through everything, the stars in the sky. I think Romans says we have no excuse. If you felt the wind on your face, you have no excuse for not knowing that God is real. Paul says that. So that's where I'm at as far as that. My cerebral brain needs to know that I have something solid and factual to hold on to. And it's so cool that God, He has a big ask of us, right? Take this book, believe me. Yeah. That's a big ask in a world full of temptations and lust and things that feel better right now in this current moment, right? It's a big ask. And so He performed big to prove Himself for that big ask, which is like through sending His Son, miracles, the miraculous, proven over and over through multiple sources, Bible and not Bible. He proved Himself as the Lord of all. Like, what the heck? And then, I don't know. Also, the cerebral isn't enough for me either. So I understand that doesn't feel like enough for a lot of people too, because God's a personal God. And it's not enough. So I've also seen Jesus just prove Himself to me over and over again throughout my life in times where I felt nothing. I was apathetic. I didn't care what He had to say to me. He was performing miracle after miracle after miracle, for me and my brain and my heart, bringing me from a place where I was desolate. I just am very in touch with the fact that I need Him, and filling all of those needs and making me worth something. What the heck?
That's so good. For me, kind of like to piggyback off of Josh, I did not grow up in the church. I started going to church when I was in 8th grade. I was kind of half in, half out for a really long time until I was about 21, 22-ish. And for me, the reason why I follow Jesus is because He's always consistent in what He says. In a world that's not consistent whatsoever, views are always changing, everything's changing around us, and we have to follow that change to be ordered to be viewed as woke. And it's just that is not how Jesus is. He is the same today, yesterday, today, and forever. So just that consistency is really key for me, and something that with my parents falling out and not having that consistency, always looking to Jesus and being able to find that was just the most beautiful thing for me. So I follow Him because He's the most consistent thing and will always be the most consistent thing in my life.
That's awesome. So Haley, is there a story, because I know that you love the Word and you love stories about Jesus. Is there a story about Jesus that sticks out to you that is maybe your favorite?
Yeah, I really like the book of Matthew. It's probably one of my favorite ones in chapter 4, when he goes out and calls out his disciples, the first 2 disciples. He goes up to fishermen and he calls them to like go follow him. And my favorite Bible verse is Matthew 4:20, and it's they immediately left their nets and followed him. And just the word immediately just is so insane to me, because how many times are we not immediately following the call of Jesus, like where he's called us or where he's leading us? And the fact that they're like leaving their nets, that's their source of income, that's their livelihood, that's everything that they know and grew up with, and that's literally their career. So just imagine like dropping your entire career just to follow Jesus immediately is insane to me. And then just the fact that they're fishermen. So when I lived in Mexico, we'd always walk past fishermen and they do not smell good at all. And it's like, there was one day I was walking I forgot where I was walking, but I was walking past them, and me and my friend at the time, we were like, that's who Jesus like chose to be his disciples, like those smelly people. And it's just like, that doesn't sound like, but like you would think that Jesus would pick like the people with the most power, the most stature, the most like publicity, or like most like power at the time. But like, that's not who he chose. He chose them, and then they immediately followed him because they're like, well, might as well. Like, I don't know. That just really stuck out to me and really hit me hard that like, if he can choose smelly fishermen, he can choose you too. So that's my favorite story.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that story. Josh, so if somebody came up to you and was like, hey, like, I read that story, how do I drop my net and follow Jesus like the disciples did in 2021? Like, what would your answer be to that?
Oh, this wasn't a curveball.
Sorry.
Yeah. How in 2021? What would it look like? Huh, to be a
Yeah,
disciple?
what would that look like
Man,
for you?
I think it would be the way we would least expect it. I think it would be. I think when Jesus called the disciples, like that's not the way we would have expected it to be done, right? Like Haley was saying, like the smelly fisherman, right? So it's gonna. I think it would be in the little things. Like if you're gonna drop everything you're doing and follow God, it's gonna be in the ways that you don't expect it. And it's gonna start out that way, and it's gonna be like the disciples. What did they start doing? They didn't start, healing people and doing all these things, but they just started following one guy, and they did it little by little. And they had to make that decision, and they had to do it daily, and they had to. I think some of those disciples, and my small group will know I'm horrible at quoting things or being confident about my accuracy and things, but, some of those disciples struggled with following God. Like they kind of went back and forth. They didn't, they did drop everything, but I think sometimes they went back, but I think really the ones that's the one thing is like we have 12 disciples that we really know of, but Jesus had other disciples, right? So you wonder how many people followed him the way those disciples did, but then kind of fell away. And really you wonder what the difference was. And I really think it was they were committed. They were willing to just do the little stuff. They weren't going to be enticed by what they left. They had everything. They gave up everything and they were okay with it. And that takes time. Maybe some of the disciples, they did it and they didn't even question it. And I think that's how God works on your heart. But I think what it looks like is you're going to drop everything at one point. And follow God, and it might not. God eases you into that, right? He does ask for everything, but he does it in the way that you can give it to him. So it's like a drop everything now, but little by little. So
Yeah, that's really good.
That's really good. So just piggybacking off of that, Rachel, what would you say are a couple things that you've had to like repeatedly sacrifice or give up, or in a sense like drop your net because you're walking with Jesus?
Yeah, I got a lot of those. That's for sure. I guess it would be, okay, there's so many things. I'm going to go with my pride. So I have a tendency, I'm a brain kind of woman, an intellectual, if you will. And I just have to be so vigilant still to this day in letting my brain lay low in order to exalt Jesus higher and trying my very, very best to lay prostrate before him. And I don't want to glamorize that, because when I talk about this right here, right now, doesn't it feel like, wow, that's so awesome. Like, look at her go. She's doing so great. She must really love the Lord. But like the moments where I'm like want to rip my heart apart and rip my head apart because my brain won't stop like trying to be better than God, and I won't stop trying to decide everything for myself, and I won't stop thinking that I know better than God. What? I'm just being honest. Like thinking that I know better than God. That's every day. That's like every day bringing myself back, like every day saying, Jesus, help me. I say all the time, help my brain lay low in order to exalt you higher. Help my brain lay low, help my brain lay low, help my brain lay low. So, and that's vigilant. And sure, like there's seasons where it's easier, seasons where it's more difficult. There's also a lot about practical working through it and like me taking my thoughts captive, which is a verse that used to really bug me. Because I was like, it doesn't make any sense, it doesn't work. But it does work. So it's a lot of vigilance. And even when I'm not feeling it, still sticking by it.
That's awesome. Haley, for you, what would you say is the difference between walking with Jesus and following culture?
Yeah, I think it goes back to like the consistency thing. Like culture is constantly changing. And like if you're not changing with culture, then you're just like not cool, or like people will literally like cancel you and stuff. It's like with Jesus, like walking with him is always like looking up and not looking like what is Rachel doing? What is everyone else doing? Like looking to what Jesus wants you to do. So it's just always looking up and not looking around you. Obviously like looking around to like encourage, like if God leads you to, yes, but just not comparing, where culture I feel like is constantly telling us to change yourself and like do all these things. And Jesus offers forgiveness. Culture does not. And it's just like, I mean, let's be honest, like, but let's be honest, everyone who apologizes in culture is just canceled anyway. So like but like if you like as Christians, like we're called to forgive. Like even if somebody does me dirty, I'm still called to forgive them. And that's not even like kind of for them. It's more for me anyways, just to be like, so I can have peace of mind and walking forward with my faith. And so it's just like, it's honestly forgiveness is like probably the biggest thing that's a difference with me, is just like, I'm able to forgive people even if they do me so bad. I'm like, okay, like I'm able to like take time, pray about it, and like receive. And then I love Jesus so much, I cannot stay mad and hold a grudge over somebody. Because like I still have to love them like Jesus loved them. Jesus didn't hold a grudge over Judas. So why should I hold a grudge over somebody? So that's with me, just forgiveness and just walking that out. So yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else have any comments on that?
Yeah, I got something on that. I think when you really look at culture and you look at the Bible in comparison, culture is all about you. Yeah. Like what can the world do for me? What can these people do for me? What can this product do for me? What can this relationship? It's all like you-centered or me-centered, whatever. And like following God, following Jesus is not about you. Like it is about you, but God's going to worry about you. You don't have to. And you just need to do what God's called you to do. And you don't have to strive to work on all those things for yourself the way culture tells you to say, oh, dress this, whatever culture is telling you to do. I think that's based in worry for us, right? It's saying like, why do we try to do those things? We worry about it. And what does God say? Don't worry about it. And then he will do those things for us. And I think when that's the case, we can avoid all the stress and all the worry that comes along with culture in that way. But we can still get a similar, like we can get what the world's going after. We, purpose, passion, joy. But it's not found in really seeking it, fulfilling ourselves. But it's really found in, doing stuff for other people, being humble. We talked about humility. And really just, it doesn't make sense, right? But at times it's like, okay, if I'm worried about myself, maybe I shouldn't worry about myself, right? You give it to God, and then you're going to get a better outcome. So.
I just wanted to I really love what both of them said, so ditto to all of that. I just wanted to point out the just obviousness of our finiteness. I don't think that's a word, but how we are not infinite, we are not God, we are not I just can feel in my bones that I am not everything that there is, and what a big ask of the world to ask us to bear that all by ourselves and to be our own, the caller of good and evil and the source of all of our confidence and security. I just want to point out how exhausting that is, how exhausting the world's ask is, and how full of life God's ask is, even though God's ask is also full of like good works are not exhausting to us because he gives us the strength that we need and because he is our source and he literally laid the foundations there. So I think that's a good source if you ask me.
That's awesome. That's a really good answer. So with walking with Jesus, I think back to scripture that says, I do things that I don't want to do, and I don't do the things that I want to do. And so it can get really discouraging when we look at this like perfect Jesus, we look at this perfect God, and we look at these amazing stories in scripture of all that Jesus did and the disciples did, and then we feel like maybe that we're taking 2 steps back, or we're not good enough, or we feel like, man, I'm just not measuring up, or I'm failing. Like, how do you guys look at Jesus and read scripture and walk with him and kind of like deal with that? Or maybe how do you kind of continue your walk with Jesus despite maybe some failures or shortcomings that you have?
Jesus is way more compassionate than us. So where we feel like we have an end to our compassion and we get empathy fatigue and can't bear the weight of other people's issues, I just always I don't know if someone said this to me or I came up with it. So either way, I'll take credit. I said that every time you go to God with the same problem, he doesn't roll his eyes at you. And he's not like, oh my gosh, this girl again with this thing again. Like, I'm so sick of dealing with her. I think that it's important to know God created the universe in his sovereignty, knew exactly what he was getting himself into. He knew exactly what he was getting himself into. And that doesn't mean you don't stare him in the face and ask him to help you and work for him your whole life and love him and be loved by him and just in glorious communion with him. And that I'm not what I'm saying is I'm not affirming a heart of rebellion that's just I'm just going to do whatever I want and then ask God for forgiveness. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that God is patient with us and he knew what he was getting himself into. He did. I think I wrote an Instagram caption once that said when God makes eye contact with you, he doesn't flinch because he sees the whole you. So he sees everything that you are, literally everything that you are, even the parts of yourself that you think you're doing a good job of hiding. You do not need to be ashamed in the face of God because God sees everything that you are and he still says that one. I want that one. So I just keep that just tucked away in my heart. And I choose to believe that when I don't feel a dang thing, when I'm God hates me. God's I'm nicer than you think.
That's good. That's really good. Do you want to go, Josh?
Sure, I'll go. I think when I'm kind of going through that, where I'm really feeling the weight of my own humanity, and kind of the I do and I do not want to do, and that whole thing. I look at who God used in the Bible, and it's failure was a requirement. He didn't pick the people that would even be at the top of our list, right? With Paul, he picked a guy who, don't pick the guy who's, persecuting the church to kind of promote it. That's not the greatest marketing. And, I think with that, kind of even how he chose Paul, why does he do those things? He does it so we can't build our own platform, right? And really it comes down to, it's failure's not the problem. It's our heart when we fail. It's, you look at David when he messed up. David, that's a big deal. Those were mistakes, right? That's a huge scandal. He had someone killed, right? And not to compare, but I avoid that. So, at least I'm not if God can use David, in his biggest mess up, then he can still use me. And then biggest thing is looking at the heart of what David did. He humbled himself, right? And that's really kind of the go back to that when what happens when you mess up? What happens when you fail? Where's your heart? Is it is it going back to God, or is it saying, oh, I'm okay. I didn't mess up that bad. Are you broken before God? And really when it comes down to it, if your heart's in that place and you read the word, God's love is undefeated and it doesn't change with me, right? I'm not going to be the guy who defeats his love, right? I'm not going to be the guy who's I've sinned too much or I've fallen too far. So those are the things, God's love is so abounding and it's described in ways that it's okay, that covers me. And those are the things I go back to of God uses the people that mess up seemingly too big to come back from. And his love is so great in those situations. So, and it's no different for me.
For me, one word that if you speak to me for like 10 minutes, I always say this. I just say there's always purpose in your pain. So no matter like what you do to mess up, like God is just going to flip that and use it for his glory. Like no matter, I just think about like my own testimony and like stuff that I've done, like stuff that I have messed up on, God has later used in life. And I've been able to like use that to like minister to people and like, because who wants to like listen to a perfect person other than Jesus, another perfect person like preach? Like the type, like the preachings that I love is like when, hey, like this is where I was at my lowest low, and this is what God brought me out of. And so that speaks volumes to people because then it brings like vulnerability and just like I feel like I'm able like to trust people if they're more vulnerable and open. So just know there's always like pain in your purpose, and he's always gonna flip that around and use that for his glory. But the enemy is always gonna be lying to you, saying that you're worthless and he's never gonna be able to use this and that you're alone, and you're not alone in your sin no matter what you're doing. Like you're not alone, but don't sit in it either. Pick yourself, let Jesus pick you up and hug you and then bring you back up and turn it around and use that for like his ministry, because that's personal to you and only you have that story. So then you can use that to bring to the one person that Jesus wants you to share that with. So don't just ignore it. Definitely like open up and let Jesus like soften your heart and get back up, pick it up, and then use it for his glory for sure. So
That's great. We'll wrap up with one last question for you all. So we've been talking about miracles that Jesus has done. We've been talking about the servanthood of Jesus. We've been talking about, the timing of Jesus. And in all of this series, is there something that God has been speaking specifically to you about Jesus, or something that you want to grow in your walk with Jesus?
Definitely. I'm gonna be bold. The miraculous for sure. So, if I believe in a God that laid the foundations of the earth, why is it that I don't believe in his divine healing sometimes? Or why is it that I feel so discouraged sometimes? Or why is it that I think that he doesn't want to like be with us and heal us? I think that that's like something I battle with a lot. I'm cerebral, so I just like want to know that 2 + 2 = 4. And with God, it can be really, really different because he makes the rules. I don't make the rules. So I think that while like I think the church could obviously have a way better theology of suffering, right? And could know how to cope with suffering in a better way other than just like name it, claim it, make it go away, ding dong, kaboom, like abracadabra. You know what I mean? I don't think God's an abracadabra kind of God. I definitely need to be encouraged in his kindness towards us. And that's like in our brains, in our hearts. There's things that I thought I would have to bear my whole life. And that the Holy Spirit has whispered to me, like, you don't. You know what I mean? Like, I'll help you with that right here. Like, we're healed, we're being healed, and we will be healed. So all at once. But yeah, definitely the miraculous. Like, it's easy to read in the Bible and be like, the history proves that. At least that's what my brain is thinking. But like to be like, what does God want to do now? And how about when he heals and when he doesn't heal? Like, how do we deal with that? And if you guys have questions about that, I'm not the answer to everything, but I've definitely read a lot. So I would love, like, God can show off in a world where there's good and evil, right? Like, there's nothing else beyond that. So it's really cool. If a miracle happened every time, it wouldn't be a miracle. But there's a lot of theology there. Anyways, we're not going to dive there. But it's really, I'm very much on the side that's just so cerebral that they're like, I'm just probably going to assume that it's not going to happen and that this is my cross to bear and this is my thorn in my side, like Paul. You know what I mean? And some things maybe are that, but I had, for a long period of time, no faith for the other side, which is Jesus literally rose from the dead. You know what I mean? What am I thinking? I don't know. Anyways, that's that. And it's not a full thought, so it's really bothering me, but it's a partial thought.
No, it's good. It's good.
I'll go. I definitely need to grow in all of those areas. I know, like, with healing, that's so tough because it's like, I think we want to make a formula out of it sometimes, but it doesn't work that way. But for me, really, God's timing, I think, is such an interesting thing because it says he's never late, but it sure feels like it a lot of times, right? But the thing is, what God's really shown me, and it kind of applies to the other areas, with healing and stuff and the miraculous, is with timing. What is God doing when he's testing me in his timing, or he's testing me in believing for healing? It's not about those things, right? Like with waiting for things, with timing, it's like, do I believe it's going to happen? Do I believe it can happen? Do I have faith that it will? Do I proclaim it? it's like, or am I just going to stand by, right? Our faith is active, and I think a lot of times we can make it passive. But you look a lot of times in the New Testament where Jesus said, by your faith you're healed, right? Like it wasn't just, oh, you showed up, so yeah, I'm going to heal you. It's it was conscious. You were said, I am expecting this. I am going after this. I am praying for it. I'm seeking it. And that really, I think, that creates in us the heart for God to move rather than, which is the big thing, rather than getting an outcome when God does move. And so for me, it's like God's showing me, make it less about what he's going to do in his timing, but more about what I believe he's going to do in his timing and why he's going to do it and why he cares about me to do it. Like all those things. God's not just a vending machine, right? It's way bigger than that, but so often we can make it about that. So looking past the timing and like the things we wait for and see what God's trying to do in those timings. And the preparation too. Preparation is huge with that. So.
Yeah, just kind of to piggyback off of Josh, definitely like his timing. One phrase that I always use when I'm like struggling with his timing is just like praising before the breakthrough, because it just makes that breakthrough like even more sweet, I think. And I just noticed when I am praising like before I have that breakthrough or like before God's like giving me this or whatever, I just notice like the time it goes by a little bit faster, I guess, because I'm not as worried about it. It is like you're not like agonizing over day, like when is this gonna happen, or like when am I gonna go do this, or when is this gonna happen? But if you're just continually like laying it down and surrendering it and giving it back to him and just honoring him with everything that you're doing, you just love him that much more through that process, and your trust grows within that too. And you're almost like, I don't really even care if this doesn't really happen. Like you become so content and like where you are at like with Jesus that you almost just like don't even need it. You're just like, and then I think not every time, but like that's kind of like when it happens, you're like, oh, it like happened. And so it's just like, stop like pinpointing, like focusing like on that one thing and just enjoy like the ride of it and just enjoying like what God is doing in your life through that process. Kind of what Josh was saying, like what you're doing through that process really matters, because it's like, what are you doing to train up like for like a battle? Like what are you doing? Are you just sitting on your butt and playing video games or like scrolling on Instagram? Or are you in the Word? Are you like going into community gatherings talking about Jesus? Are you growing with other people? Are you challenging other people? Like you're holding people accountable. Like those are all things that grow your faith. And so it's like, don't just sit on your butt and wait for it. Like work for it and just give it back all to God. So yeah.